Starting the music, Jerry.
Yep, okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jerry Petito.
I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. And in time, this too shall pass. I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. Jerry Petito taught the class. I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. Love's the answer, the greener grass. I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. One day at a time, free at last.
When you don't know just what to do,
Just what to do, just what to do.
if what you're feeling is really true,
Is really true, is it really true?
just keep your ideas safe and sound.
Safe and sound, safe and sound.
That's exactly how change is found.
Change is found, change is found. I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. And in time, this too shall pass. I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. Jerry Petito taught the class. I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. Love's the answer, the greener grass. I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. One day at a time, free at last.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jerry Petito Show on HamiltonRadio.net. Everyone out there who knows me knows I am the author of I'm Not an Addict, I'm Just an Ass. I'd rather be a smartass than a dumbass because, guys, 29 years ago, I was a dumbass. 29 years later, today, I am a smartass. So if anybody out there needs help with addiction, reach out to me. No judgments, just help. Okay, guys? Reach out to me. So I have a really cool guest. I really do, okay? Not only is she cool and awesome and beautiful, but her accent is to die for. So I'm going to have her tell you her name and where she's from, and then I'm going to read a poem about abuse, about the theme of this whole thing. Tell everyone who you are, sweetheart.
Hello, everyone. I'm Bo Blue. I'm from the big old Australia where the gum trees grow, and I'm super duper excited to be here.
So cool. Oh my gosh. My favorite place on earth. Okay. So we're going to be talking about abuse and her book, Heroes Within Us, and all that great stuff. I'm going to read a poem that I wrote because my audience is used to hearing a poem from me. So I'm going to read a poem that I've written about abuse. Okay, guys? While writing this poem, my heart sure will break. Abuse towards a child causes a child to ache. Not just for a moment or even a year, a lifetime of sorrow, as in forever, I fear. A child is helpless, should be cared for and fed, not abused and disrespected, tortured and left for dead. The monsters that do this, death sentence should await. That poor child was stripped, now in our hands is his fate. The monsters that do this should be put to death. For the child they destroyed, let them take their last breath. They should not serve in jail. What the F? They serve their time. Forever a child is damaged, but they get away with this crime. They are not human, not healthy or sane. They're suffering too, so put them out of their pain. We need to be more strict when it comes to breaking laws. When people rape and murder, the punishment should fit the cause. Child abuse is also towards boys, not just females alone. Step up to the plate, people. Abuse needs to be known. How adults just ignore, I can never conceive. They too are sick, this truth. Please believe. It's so much deeper than we'll ever know. Crime against kids is the lowest of low. Domestic violence is second in line, at least they're adults accepting this crime. Most is towards women, and there are some men. Regardless of sex, it happens time and again. If you are involved in being abused, it's time you are heard. Stop being confused. There is so much help if you want it to end. If you do have a voice, please speak to a friend. There is help out there. Ask now, please don't wait. Reach out to them now before it's too late. Stop being a victim. Stand up for yourself. Please face your fears. Store them high on a shelf. Seek out the Lord. He's not far away. If you ask him for help, he can save you today. So this is the page that I had made. This is her, and this is her book. We're going to be talking about that today as well. Okay? So I want everyone out there to know through this interview that there is absolute hope for all of you. Hi, sweetheart.
Yes, Gary, that was an amazing poem. Honestly, that struck so many chords for me. I could relate to all of it, and beautifully said, really. Yeah.
So let's talk. Let's start with this. You wrote this incredible book,
Mm.
right? Tell us
Yeah.
what this book is about. Tell us what this book is about.
Yeah. So Heroes Within Us is really about my journey of going through abuse. And I went through abuse as a young 7-year-old child, and it went on for at least 2 years. I say at least because it was so horrific that the only way I could cope, body, mind, and spirit, was to block it out at the time. And so I've had a lot of struggle with that. But I got my memories back when I was around 12 years old, started getting them back a lot more. And through that, later on, I decided to write this book because I knew that it would not only be healing for me to do it, but it could help, hopefully, a lot of people to know that they're not alone, for one, and for two, that it is possible to heal, because I know how hard it can be feeling like it isn't possible. And I am living proof that it is. Yep.
So, okay, we lost your voice for just about 10 seconds. You wrote the book.
You have frozen, Gary. Hopefully that comes back in a minute.
Just tell us again. You wrote the book.
Yes, I did. I wrote the book, and
Okay,
it was it was largely for my own healing journey, as well as hopefully to help other survivors to feel less alone and to know that healing is possible.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you a couple questions, and you have every right to say, Jared, I'd rather not answer that.
Sure.
Okay, sweetheart? Okay. So were you sexually abused and physically abused and mentally abused?
Yes, I was physically, sexually, and mentally abused. So emotional abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, a lot, unfortunately. It all happened. And from the same person, yeah.
Was it a family member?
It was, yes, it was. And I think that that was one of the most painful parts for me, that it was a family member. And I think that that can also have a lot of repercussions. It can have a lot of aftermath that follows through after the abuse as well for survivors. And of course, this is always the case, whether it's a family member or not. But when it was a family member for me, it was like, it was really hard because that's in the family, and not everyone's going to believe you. Some are, some won't. And it just made healing afterwards that much harder.
Okay. So at what age were you when you actually remembered all of it and said, I need to heal? And what age were you, and who did you turn to help the healing begin?
Yeah, so the age I was when the abuse began to happen was 7 years old. And the age I started fully remembering the memories, I think, on some level I didn't know it had happened, but I didn't fully remember it. And I was just doing everything I could as a 12-year-old child to, to continue on and to not think about it as much as possible. But when I was 12, I started getting those memories back. And who I turned to for it, I didn't really turn to anyone at first. I didn't sort of even realize that there was help available, which is another reason why I've written this book, to try and help, because I know that back then I didn't even realize at the time that there was help available, but soon enough I found counseling, and I began to talking to those around me. And that was a really helpful thing. I think talking it out, especially for the first couple of times, has always been one of the best things I could have ever done.
Right? Because when you don't talk about it, it ends up killing you. You die inside, right?
100%, definitely. I honestly feel like the times where I try to hold it all in are those times where I will end up breaking down. I will, because if I'm holding it all in, I'm not allowing myself to release what I need to talk about to heal. And I think that that is why talking about it is so amazing and so healing and cathartic. And it's something that we definitely need to be doing, seeking that support. We are worthy of it. And I think, talking it out is just one of the most healing things you can possibly do.
So have you forgiven this person, and is this person still alive?
This person is not still alive. They were very old. So a couple of years back, they passed on. And forgiveness, personally, I don't think that any abuse survivor should ever have to forgive the person who abused them. Not ever. I think it's more about knowing within yourself that it wasn't your fault. I think that's a very big thing for healing and for your healing journey. And that I talk about a whole lot in my book is about coming to the knowingness that it isn't your fault of what happened, because a lot of trauma survivors do feel that it's their fault when it really isn't. So I think, it's definitely not about necessarily forgiving the person who abused you. I mean, maybe it is for some people, but I think for a lot of survivors, it really is more about tapping into that knowing that it's not your fault and healing from there.
Okay, so let's talk about that, because, this has always been like out there, forgiveness for others really heals yourself. Do you agree with that to a point or not?
My opinion with that one's a little controversial. I am happy to talk about it though. I definitely don't agree with that personally. I mean, I definitely agree with it on some level for some things. Like if it's someone's hurt you mildly and they're someone that you really love in your life or something and they have apologized, then I feel like, yeah, great. Forgiveness is really, really good in that aspect. But when it comes to abuse survivors, I know personally from being told forgive and forget that it is actually one of the worst things to hear as a survivor, because it says to that survivor that actually it's on you, not the abuser. And it's on you to forgive them. And that's all you need to do to heal. And that can actually be very damaging, in my opinion. I've seen it for myself, and I've seen it for a lot of other survivors as well. On the other hand, I do think that for some survivors, forgiveness might be a part of their healing journey.
Amazing.
So it's very individual. But I think, for the most part, you've got to be quite careful when it comes to that forgiveness thing, when it comes to abuse survivors, at least.
You just never thought of it that way. Wow. I think I'm going to agree a little bit with that. Yes. Wow. Okay. Another way to look at it. So, so let me ask you this. So you've obviously been involved in a lot of self-help groups, and you've talked to tons of women and men that were abused, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So, yes. Okay. So let me ask you this. Why would some think being abused was their fault?
Honestly, I don't think there's any reason whatsoever that it could ever be the victim's fault.
No, but why would someone think that?
Why would someone think that?
Yeah.
I think the reason probably, which is it's kind of an awful reason when you think about it, because those are the people who think that it's a survivor's fault rather than the abusers. They're the flying monkeys of sorts. They're the ones that are enabling that abuse and saying that it's okay. I think that their mentality is probably something along the lines of keeping their reputation, pushing things all under the covers, under the blanket, and sort of a shroud of silence, putting that on the survivor. And because as soon as they say that it's the survivor's fault, they know that that's going to be a massive trigger for that survivor. And, it's going to be hard for them to speak up again around it, which is awful, because we should be speaking up and we should be encouraged to speak up and we should be supported while speaking up. That's my opinion. Yeah, I think I think that really needs to stop, that whole opinion that it's the victim's fault, because it is never the survivor's fault, not ever.
You mean it's never the victim's fault? Oh, the
Yeah.
survivor. Yes. So tell us a little bit from where you were to where you are now and how you really got here.
Yes. So, okay, while I was writing this book, I actually, I was not in the best place when I started writing this book. It's been about 3 years in the making now, this one book, and it's been my book baby. It has been absolutely everything to me. I've worked so hard on it. I wasn't in the best place myself while writing the book. I was actually going through some form of abuse as well during the first part of writing the book. And what was interesting was, in a way, this book, again, it was sort of like my savior in a way, because it made me realize, as I was writing about abuse, hey, actually, I'm in an abusive situation right now. As I'm writing this, I need to get out. And so I got out and I finished the book. And because of that, it's been like one of the most amazing, most healing things I've ever done. And I think that how I got here today through it is I just kept going. I just kept writing, reminding myself that, it is good enough, because it's about the survivors, it's about the survivors. It's about the message. It's about the hope and the healing that it will bring.
I have a question. So, okay. Wow. This is a question I'm sure everyone asks. Okay. You just said you realized you were in another sort of abusive relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So what would make you allow that again in your life?
I think, good question. I think it's not really ever the survivor's fault here. So it's not a question of sort of allowing it. It's more of a question of realizing it, because it can be very, very hard to notice it, especially. Here's a good sort of analogy of it. If you've grown up in a childhood where you've been constantly told that you're not good enough, or constantly told that it's your fault for what that abuser is doing. I actually grew up in my childhood while I was being abused. The abuser would constantly tell me that I was bad and that it was my fault what he was doing, so that I would, when I grew up, feel so much blame for everything in my life. That's been one of the hardest things to get through, and I talk about in my book. And that's why I think, it's not the survivor's fault. It's more just when you come to realize it, and hopefully that's soon. I think it's about having awareness of it. And I think it's also about changing the culture that we sort of have around rape culture, which is, we grow up in this society that seems to say that men abusing women, or just men abusing anyone really, is okay, that if he talks really harshly to you, he's just in a bad mood and he needs you to cheer him up. And that's really horrible and not right. And I think growing up in that society, you start to believe yourself that it's okay. And so it takes rather a large process to start coming to the realization that, hey, actually, it's not okay. You deserve safety, both emotionally and physically.
Whoa. I'm blown away by what you're saying, because I'm going to tell you why. I've helped a lot of women and other, men and children in abuse, and for children from age 15, I think it was, had them for 2 years. So I've done a lot with all this, but you're the only one that seems to be making me get it, because I've helped so many women in abusive situations. I've even got them in touch with Women's Space and helped them and all that. No one has ever put it to me that way. I've always thought, I don't understand. How are you okay with staying in this abusive relationship? There's so much help out there now versus years ago, or when you were a child. That's totally different. And women years ago were stuck. 50 years ago, they didn't have a job. The husband had to feed the kids, and I get all that, but not today. And I would question it. You are the first person that made me get it. So you think it's normal, and you almost don't really even see that it's abuse at some point.
Yeah, definitely.
Really?
Yeah, that's how it went for me. And I think, there's also a factor that contributes to that and reinforces it, which is the people who want to victim blame you, those people who do victim blame you, those people who say, actually, this didn't happen to you. What are you talking about? Even if they were there or even if they knew the person who abused you. And that has happened to me so much. So I think that because it had happened to me so much around the childhood abuse I went through, when I went through this other form of abuse, it was in my mind, it was in my brain. I had, my past telling me that it's not happening, I'm just crazy. And I also had the person who was abusing me saying that. So there's a lot of reinforcers that unfortunately go along with abuse. There's the people on the side who victim blame, or those who know the abuser that try to tell you that you're crazy, and the abuser themselves will usually try to tell you that you're crazy as well. So it can be really, really hard for that survivor to get out of that situation when they're constantly surrounded by all this awful reinforcement that is not supportive. It's awful, and it's saying that you should stay in the situation when you really shouldn't. Yeah, it's awful.
Someone like me, someone with my personality, right? I'm like all or nothing, get in or get out. My personality, if someone came to me, which they have, and there were 2 cases where the person was lying, but I still handled it the same way. This is how I handled it. If you truly are being abused, we need to get you away from this person immediately. That's it, immediately, and I can help you do that. If you're truly not being abused and you're saying you are, we need to get you away from this person immediately. You know what I mean? So it's not a healthy situation either way. So for me to hear survivors say, they didn't believe me, some family members and friends didn't believe me, they were saying I was lying, they should still know there's a problem. That's why I'm saying this. They should still know we have to intercede here because something is wrong. If the person is lying, we have to help this person. There's a reason why this person is lying. If this person is not lying, we need to help this person immediately. There's a reason why this person is not lying. Let's get her. So I'm confused with any of that, where they could say to a child, you're lying, and we're just going to forget about it, and you're still going to be with that person alone. I don't get it, Bo.
I think, and it is hard to get, I think survivors get it because we've been there, we've been through it. It's really, let me put it this way. For instance, since I was abused in my family by a family member, you know how society sees blood family as your ultimate family. You have to be with that family, and you're not allowed to not be with that family. And if you're not with that family, shame on you. Like, you're frowned upon. It's not society's way. So when I was abused by a family member, it was very frowned upon and very sort of shrouded in shame. And so that shame went on me rather than the abuser a lot in my childhood. And especially when it happens from family members, it really sucks because they're the ones that you're supposed to look up to, especially as a young child. And so when your family members all around you, or people who are close to you, or people who are close to the abuser, say things that aren't true, things like, oh, they're not actually doing anything, he's not actually doing anything bad, you're just being really sensitive. It can get into your mind, it can get into your brain, convincing you that actually you are really sensitive, and actually he's not doing anything that bad, they're right, because so many people will do it. It's usually not just one. Pretty much if you've got someone abusing you, all of their friends are in on it, because they usually put on the charm for them as well, and they're kind of being abusive to them as well, and they get them in on the circle. They get them in on the shame game. And it's awful. See, when this happens, it really does get into our minds as survivors, and that's not our fault.
All right. Is there anything you would like to say without a question for me that you want to share?
I think the biggest thing I want to always share about my journey and my book about the abuse that I went through is that I'm living proof that there is hope, that it is possible to heal. I've been through horrors through my childhood and through my life that I will never forget. And I have thought a couple of times in my life that there is no way forward, that I couldn't make it through. But then I found the light, and I found the hope, and I found my hero within. And because of that, I now know that it is absolutely possible to heal, that there is hope, and that lives can be saved. And I want to contribute to that. I want to help. I feel like I need to do that as part of my own healing. And I just really hope that this book can help other survivors to see their own inner heroes too, and to know that there is hope and that it is possible to heal. That's the main thing. It is possible to heal. So don't give up. My books just
I want
become
to be
available as well.
one of the first to get.
Gary, you have frozen on my screen a bit. Can't hear you. Hopefully that comes back. There we go.
This book, that's for sure. So, Jersey, a little bit about, I guess. I can hear you. Can you talk? I think I can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, go ahead. Okay, go ahead. So, did you hear what I was saying to you?
I didn't, sorry.
Sharing a little bit about what your abuse entailed. Okay. Share with everyone a little bit about what your abuse entailed, and a little bit about what's in your book.
Sure. Okay, so the abuse that I went through was very mainly, unfortunately, sexual. And to me, that was the worst part, the absolutely worst part. I don't want to trigger anyone too much, so I'm going to try and not go into too much detail, because I know that might trigger some people. What I will say is that this person, who was the person who abused me in my family, he would babysit me. I think it was every week or every fortnight, something along those lines. It can be very hard to remember these particular details for survivors, but I think it was around that. And every time I went there, I can remember clearly, unfortunately, that he would do things like he would put me down on the couch and he would sexually abuse me. And there were times when he would hit me. There were a lot of times when he would bring out his guns, his rifles, and he would aim them at me. There was one time when he actually shot very close to me, and he purposely missed, but he wanted to scare me. And one of the biggest things that he did as well, the thing that scared me the most through the abuse I went through, was that when he pointed those guns at me after he had sexually abused me, he would threaten me while pointing them, saying he would not only hurt and kill me, but he would also do that to my family, the ones I loved the most, if I told anyone about what was happening to me as a child. So that's why it took me a while to tell my parents, because of that threat. It wasn't only threatening me anymore, it was also threatening the ones I love, and that's a tactic that abusers use a lot, unfortunately. Yeah.
Okay. Now, wow. So, did your personality start changing? Did your parents see something changing in your personality?
I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. I was going through a lot of bullying at school as well at the same time, so I've been through rather a lot throughout my childhood. So I think they probably put it down to that. Abusers can be very, very secretive, and very, very good, unfortunately, at what they do, which is awful. They know how to hide things. They do. And they know how to silence the survivor. They know how to silence the victim, by telling them, by threatening them with things. And so I did stay silent. I tuned out And I was highly damaged about it. And one day when he had done the worst thing he had done to me, which was hold me down on the couch and really just take my innocence away, and I was screaming and no one heard me. It was awful. One day when that happened, I came home and I just broke down in my room and I couldn't hold it in anymore. And I went to someone and I told them.
How did they respond to you?
Beautifully. They said, the first thing I heard from someone when I had first spoken up about the abuse was, it is not your fault and you will never have to see him again. And those two things were, you know, I'm still grateful to them to this day. I think I actually mentioned that in my book. I am very grateful to them to this day because that meant the world to me as a survivor. And though the road after that might have not been so great, with words said about the abuse I went through, that was really, really helpful for me. That those words I've really carried with me. So, yeah.
Okay. Wow. Did you share with friends of yours in school, or did you ever share?
Not
you finally told that one.
Yeah, not for a very long time. Not even quickly after I told my parents, you know, I think it took a while until I was really ready to open up about that more. And then later on, when I was a teenager, I did share with my friends. And they were like, oh my gosh, you know, I can't believe that happened. I'm so sorry. So it had really nice reactions to it and were really supportive. So I was very lucky with that. I think, you know, when I hit the age of sort of 12 was when I really began coming to more awareness about what had happened to me and that I needed to heal. I needed to not stay in the depression forever, and I needed to sort of find a way to get out of that. And in order to do that for me, I really needed to speak up about it, to talk about it, to talk it through. Because when it's just sort of rolling around in your mind and your heart, what you've been through, it can be very, very hard to release that. So talking about it for me was one of the most healing things I have ever done.
Okay, so now let's fast forward. You're an adult. You're now, not now, but you were also in this sort of abusive relationship and you're writing this book. What kind of an abuse was that?
That was physical, sexual, and emotional abuse again. It was nowhere near to the level of what I went through in my childhood, but it only takes once. It only takes once for you to automatically be a survivor and for you to not have you should never have had to go through it. That's my opinion. It only takes once. And for me, it did only take once or twice of it happening with that relationship to really put me back a bit. And I had to go on a rather large healing journey with that as well. And I've put a lot about that in the book as well. Everything in this book is about all the abuse I went through. It applies to all of it. It's, you know, I talk about shame and healing the shame, the secondhand shame. I call it secondhand shame because it's not actually our shame, but as survivors, because we've been told that it's our shame when it's not, we tend to, you know, we accidentally start thinking that ourselves. We start believing it ourselves. So I talk about how to release that and how to sort of come to the realization that it actually isn't our shame. And I talk about the guilt that isn't ours as well, the guilt that we shouldn't feel because it's not our fault. I talk a whole lot about it not being our fault because I think that really was the hardest part for me to come to awareness of. And I think that does apply to a lot of survivors as well.
You again, I'm losing. Bo, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I can hear you now. Secondhand shame. We lost you a little bit. Just tell us again what that means.
Sure. So secondhand shame to me means it's really about the shame that was put on you during the abuse. So the abuser usually and very often puts shame upon the survivor, upon the victim, and says that it's actually their fault when it's not. It's actually the abuser's fault. And a lot of the time, family members can also do this to the survivor. Friends of the abuser can do this to the survivor. So I talk a lot in my book about secondhand shame and secondhand guilt. And what I mean by that is that it comes from the abuser. It doesn't come from you. And it's about about bringing awareness to it and realizing that fact that you're a hero within, and it's actually not your shame or guilt to hold, and you are allowed to release that and sort of send it back to the abuser where it belongs, and it's not your fault. So I talk about that a whole lot because it's so, so important.
That is so beautifully put. So beautifully put. I'm going to hold the photo of your book up again. Tell everyone where they can get this book.
Sure. So all you have to do, I've just made it live specifically for this interview, so I'm super duper excited. All you've got to do is go to Amazon and type in Heroes Within Us. And if you want to be able to find it super easily and super quick, just type in Heroes Within Us by Bo Blue, and it should come up as the top result. Thank you so, so much for looking at it. I just really want this book to bring hope and healing, and it really means the world to me to get it out there.
I cannot wait to read this book. I mean, again, listening to the way you explain things, I've never had anyone put things that way. You know, even the secondhand shame, beautifully put, girlfriend. I mean, wow. Your book is going to help a lot of people, Okay, let's talk to the men out there, because I'm sure you've also interacted with a lot of abused men, correct?
Yes.
Let's talk to the men out there listening who maybe are in abusive relationships or situations. Talk about that so they can recognize it.
Definitely. I think, I know men go through abuse as well as women, 100%. And that needs to be brought awareness to as well, because if we don't bring awareness to that as well, then those men could get really, really put on the sidelines, and that would be incredibly sad. We need to bring awareness to the fact that men go through abuse as well as women, and everyone goes through abuse. Abuse is abuse, and it happens. And there's a lot of culture in society that unfortunately says to men, the message that is put out there to men is that you shouldn't talk up about it if you're going through abuse, because you should just be a man. And I think that is awful. I don't think that should be the definition of a man whatsoever. I think that, we're all human beings who deserve to be safe, who deserve to be looked after and supported just as much as anyone else. And gender should not come in to affecting that not being the case. It is always the case that we should always be supported and looked after, whether we are a man, a woman, somewhere in between. We should always be supported and in a supportive place for ourselves and around others. And if someone is not treating us that way, we deserve better, and men deserve better, and women deserve better, and we just all deserve better. Look, abuse is abuse. Full stop. Abuse is abuse, and that's what we need to be putting out there. Needs awareness.
Okay, so now I want your opinion on something.
Mm-hmm.
If a school teacher, just say a babysitter, someone who's around children, if they notice a change in that child and they start to think there's possibly abuse going on,
mm-hmm.
who should they reach out to?
So in my country, it's child protection or the police. First thing you do, call the police, in my opinion. Always call the police, because once you call the police, you have helped that child. It can be easy to get caught up in the trap of, oh my goodness, what do I do? This child might be being hurt, but what if they're not being hurt, or what if they are being hurt, and what do I do? Yeah. Best thing to do, call the police. Just look, as soon as you realize it, just call the police, because you yourself, even if you've been through it yourself, you're not going to be able to help that child as much as the police and as much as child protection can help that child, because they are qualified to do this. They are ready to act. They know what to do immediately, and you will be a hero having contacted the police. And if you don't know child protection, the police will contact child protection. It will all get sorted out. So just know that it is definitely a level of responsibility. I think that people should definitely call the police, call call the authorities and get it sorted, because, you know, if you don't, then there is a very high chance that that child could be going through some really awful things. And if you are worried about, okay, what if I'm wrong? What if they're not going through this? Just let yourself know that, okay, but what if I'm right? You know, and what's the biggest one? And obviously, the biggest one is, what if I'm right? So that's why it is always important to call the police and to make sure that everything is sorted out. And even if you do happen to be wrong and they weren't going through something really bad, the police will sort that out and it will all be sorted. It's not on you at that point. You've done the right thing. And so just keep doing that. Make sure to do that, because by doing that, you are saving lives.
Beautiful. So my last question for you is this. Your life today, you're in a relationship today.
Yes.
Yes? Tell us about
Beautiful.
that. Okay.
So I'm actually engaged.
Yeah.
And I am amazingly happy with my beautiful fiance. We are incredibly happy, looking at a wedding in a couple of years. And I'm just crazily happy. I'm so proud to be where I am today. You know, I think I took a couple of years after the other abuse that I went through to heal and to find myself. And through that, I also finished writing this book. And I think that doing that has gotten me in such a good place, the best place I've ever been in my life. And it's been amazing. And through doing that, it was almost like the universe smiled at me and I got to find my beautiful fiance. And it's just amazing. It's just amazing. I think I'm so happy and I'm so blessed to be where I am now.
Well, your whole face just lit up. Amazing. Your whole face just lit up. So give him a hug from me, please. How did you guys meet?
We actually met at a group together, and we went out. We both went to this group together, and I met her there, and it was beautiful. I like to think that I really did just know as soon as I saw her that, you know, she was the one. So, yeah.
Wait, sweetheart, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Wait, can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Okay, I lost you right after you met at a group. You met at a group. Did you say she? Are you with a woman?
Yes, I am. We met at a group, and we just sort of knew from there.
And she was also abused. But she was also abused, obviously, because you met at a group?
No. The group was actually for LGBT.
Oh, okay. So
yeah, so a very supportive environment.
All right. So you might be interested in. Okay, beautiful. So you might be interested. Let me get. Okay, I'm moving all over the place here. Okay, hold on, guys. You might be interested in the show that I just did at 2:00, and I shared it. Check my wall, and if you want, share it. And this is why. My daughter's married to a woman. Okay, my daughter-in-law is half black, and my granddaughter, they got a black gentleman for sperm. So my daughter, you know, so they could feel like a big family. My daughter introduced me to this woman. Her name is Diane, and she's married to Kristen. They've fostered and adopted 5 children of all races. And Kristen had her baby 2 years ago, and they help with autism. They were the first couple in PA to get an adoption of being the same-sex marriage. So they help with all that. So and her story is incredible. Their hearts are insane. Every single child, and this is where it really gets crazy, every single child that they fostered had serious emotional health and mental and physical issues, and they didn't care. And they took them, helped them. Some said they wouldn't ever walk again, they wouldn't talk, and they are under their care. So that's why this story is so beautiful. So when we're done with our show, check that show out and please share it.
That sounds beautiful. I definitely will. What a beautiful message and story.
Yes. And they're involved in the LGBT too, with helping all the it's an amazing story. So 2 shows back to back. This is so beautiful. Well, before we close, we have time. Is there anything else you want to share?
Well, I'm just super excited because, this book has been 3 years in the making, and it has been incredible, and I'm so excited to have it finally dropped and finally ready. It's released now. It's live on Amazon, both paperback and ebook. So if you were called to, go get it. I hope that you love it as much as I have loved, writing it for the purpose that it is meant to have, which is to bring hope and to bring healing and to be a guide of sorts for those who have been through abuse of any kind on their healing journey to find their own heroes within. I've done it, and I know that you can too.
Beautiful. Thank you, sweetheart. Well,
thank you.
I want to thank you for this incredible interview, and I want to thank you for getting up at 5 a.m. because it's like it's now 6:30 a.m. there.
Look, I'm so stoked to get up at that time because honestly, I am excited about this book, and I am so grateful for your help, Geri. You have been amazing, giving me this opportunity. It's been absolutely incredible, and I can't express how grateful I am because I really am. It's been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much.
You are welcome. Do we have any other dates for different networks where I'll be interviewing you yet? Did we do that?
Not yet.
Okay. So when we're done with this interview, you message me right away. I have time today, as soon as we're done, and we'll get some dates set up because I'm on 5 networks total. So we're going to get this out there, girlfriend, because your story needs to be told. Your story needs to be told.
Thank you.
Listen. No, thank you. Are you kidding me? This is what I always say. Everyone has a journey, and everyone has, all right, we all have an ability to take whatever our journey was. We have a choice. We could either just make it fall, or we can make it grow, right? We could either say, you know what, all the hurt or pain I've been through, I'm gonna have the power over this, and I'm gonna help others. I'm gonna overcome it and help others, and that's what you've done. So you're a champion. You're a hero. Okay, sweetheart, you are. And I'm so happy that you're happy. I'm so happy that you're happy.
I am. And I think, this book has been a big part of what has contributed to that, being in the life that I am in now it's been amazing to be able to get to this place. And I just really, really want other survivors to be able to get there too. And that's why I've written this book. So thank you so much for the opportunity to share that.
So beautiful. What's your fiance's name?
Ali.
Tell Ali I said hello. I'm happy for both of you. We're going to get this out there, girlfriend.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm going to buy it. I want to read it ASAP. We're going to get this out there. So, all right, all my listeners, I want to thank everyone out there for listening. Guys, share this show, okay? Because this is going to touch lives. This is going to save lives. Unfortunately, I always say this. I always say that when I talk about abuse and addiction, I always say, unfortunately, there's always someone out there who's been affected by it. And that's the sad part. So let's get this out there and let's start saving lives together. So share this video, guys. On that note, everybody have a great night. Bye, sweetie.
Bye.
Okay. All right, I'm going to shut you off on Facebook, Geri. Thank you, Bonnie, for being on here.
Thank you.